I was fortunate enough to be able to have the experience of slowing myself down, quieting my spirit, but also really struggling with loneliness and struggling with sort of that feeling of the, that dark night of the soul that writers have written about. And so I did a lot of songwriting in COVID, and a lot of it really was inspired by this idea of finding refuge and a retreat from this chaotic, troubling world. And so this idea for the name of such a place is just Walden.
Welcome to Faith and What Resonates, a show that explores the intersection of faith, spirituality, music, and the nature of inspiration. I'm Gail Gallagher, and I'm a professional musician and lifelong seeker. I was raised both Catholic and Unitarian Universalist at the same time, and as I grew up sorting my theology, I found my spiritual ground in music and theater. On this show, I interview folks about their faith journeys and the role music plays in their lives as we explore the magic of the things that resonate. Today's guest is Katy Oberle. She is a singer-songwriter based in Columbus, Ohio, who describes her music as spiritually centered folk pop, influenced by the traditions of Unitarian Universalism and Buddhism. In our conversation, we talk about her journey to UUism, her spiritual connection to songwriting, as well as her connection to nature, and how all that connects to the story of her upcoming EP, Driftwood. You'll be hearing clips of her music throughout the show. Here's a bit of her song Shine as we go into our conversation.
They won't elude me now that I've opened my eyes. Yesterday's gone and tomorrow will soon be. Now is the moment I prize. This here, this now is the time for us all to rise up with peace in our hearts and with love.
All right. This is another episode of Faith and What Resonates, and I am here on the Zoom with Katy Oberle. Hi, Katy.
Hi, Gail. It's so fun to be here.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, and it's so how we met is we are in a musician group called Amplify, and Katy posted that she was a Unitarian singer-songwriter person, and I was like, we are friends now. And then and now here we are. But Katy, I'm gonna let you introduce yourself to the audience.
Well, thanks. Like that, it was so cool. I was like, this is just serendipity or synchronicity or whatever. But yeah, the universe brought us together through this platform, and that's exactly one way to describe me as a Unitarian Universalist singer-songwriter. Sometimes I say mindful folk pop singer-songwriter, but I'm also a therapist. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist in Ohio, and I guess first identify as that in terms of the what do you do question. But this is the phase of my life where I'm wanting to sort of have that dual answer for what do I do and how to identify. And so that's exciting. So thanks for having me on and like helping me identify and grow this part of my life. Yeah, it's really special to be able to find platforms that honor the convergence of spirituality and also that like UU spirituality with music.
Yeah. Which you use spirituality, since it is so very choose your own adventure. Like
Yes,
it's great to like explore that in this format.
That phrase tells you nothing basically, like or nothing and everything, I guess.
Yeah, everyone has their own free and responsible search for truth and meaning. Cool. Tell me stories.
That's right. What does yours look like? Yes.
Exactly. Which that brings me to my next question. So, tell me a little bit about the shape of your faith journey.
Yeah. So my parents raised me Presbyterian, but really that was more of my mom's doing. My dad was like, God is in nature. That is all I will say, which was cool. But yeah, my mom was the one who took me to church. But then when I got to be in middle school, I just gravitated towards another church in our area, and that was the United Church of Christ. denomination, that had a lot of youth activity going on. And so I just felt like I could identify more there. And it was very liberal and progressive. And, you and I had joked before when we were talking about this podcast that there is a name that Unitarians have for UCC, and it's Unitarians Considering Christ. And like when I look back, I kind of that was my journey at that time. And I did I started songwriting in middle school when I started learning to play the guitar, and I was able to perform these songs at their contemporary worship service. And the songs were Christian based a lot, but like they were pretty global in terms of the those UU principles, interconnectedness, and search, just being a spiritual searcher, right? And so I continued on in that search process through college and being exposed to just, of course, like other ways of thinking. And my professor of one of my classes was a UU and told me about this congregation just outside of the college town we were in. And so I went there, and I'm like, oh, there's a thing for the things that I believe and don't believe, because by that time, I probably more identified as an agnostic or an atheist. Yes, I think that was the time, too. I was reading a lot of Richard Dawkins at that time.
As one does.
As one does. As one does in this journey. And so it was just an evolution from there. And then in grad school, I found another congregation of UU. And then my husband and I settled in Milwaukee. And that's where we actually became participating members of a UU congregation. And it was really beautiful, because that's the time too that we started thinking about having kids and where we would want our kids to grow up in terms of a community, right, of like-minded people, but not so like-minded that it became closed-minded. Mm-hmm. And so really just wanting a place for them to grow their moral development, be a spiritual searcher, or just say no, I don't want to do religion at all, but here is just a place where I can be a free-thinking individual. And so then that brought us, after 10 years, back to Columbus, Ohio, full circle to where I grew up, and found a UU congregation here, which I love. And then this is the point in time where I've been playing music all along, but I was able to now really, as my kids got older, start playing and writing more of my own music and getting to do that at this congregation. So it's been a pretty wonderful journey, and I am excited about the growth that, in both my spiritual journey and my music journey, and definitely at this point in my life, how I can weave those two together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's really great. And that is... we make so many jokes about ourselves, Unitarians do, but it is one common story I have heard is that that it is also the go-to church for atheists with children is also what I've heard too.
Yeah, because it's also got this, it's Our Whole Lives. It's that comprehensive sex ed curriculum, and it's just it's let's find a place where we can have some sort of what is Christianity, what is Judaism, and that's part of their curriculum. I think in middle school, they go to a mosque, they go to a temple, they go to churches, and they're exposed to all these things. And that's the kind of kids we want to raise, is free thinkers, critical thinkers, compassionate people. So you used to, I think, a good job of that.
No, absolutely. And I know when I grew up, UU, I did the thing where you go to the different churches, and it makes me think of this one time we went to a synagogue, and I still have in my mind this rabbi saying, "It's all just clubs."
Aw, it's all just clubs.
It's all just clubs.
And they do say, right, it's world religions have 95% in common, right? Mm-hmm. So, but it's that other tiny percent that gets us in trouble with each other. And so, I think also that it's been a balance of within myself, do I lean in more to the UU, kind of being a part of this formal structure of a congregation and all of that, because that also feels not as other end of the spectrum, which is so free and la 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 la, but then it's trying to herd cats at that point. Mm-hmm. So it's how structured are you, and do you really want to be a part of what really sometimes feels like a Christian or a more classic way of organizing, on Sundays we go to this place, mm-hmm. and we sing these songs and we hear this person speak. But I haven't felt constricted
Mm-hmm.
overall, and I think that sometimes that just ebbs and flows in terms of what type of spiritual development work I want to do. And maybe that does mean going and listening to the homilies on Sundays. And maybe sometimes that just honestly means like going on a hike with the family through woods, And I think that in UU, that's also, of course, everyone, the people that are running the church want you to be participatory, but they also understand that like, it's, you can do that in so many other ways through not having to also just show up in Sunday morning, like going out into the world and doing social justice work, right?
Yeah.
And UU is also really, I think, does a beautiful job of like, here are so many options of how you can like live into our values, and that doesn't just have to mean coming to church on a Sunday.
Yeah, no, absolutely, absolutely, and it has been interesting in the pandemic times too. Like, feel
Yeah.
like what works for me as far as like tuning into a Zoom service versus
Mhm.
like going for a walk and listening to On Being.
That's
Um,
right. Yeah, exactly.
so
That's beautiful. And yeah, it's given us some, yeah, I think some thoughts about like how important is that in terms of, I guess, just being more intentional about like why are we doing certain things.
mhm.
And I think that UU does a good job of that, of being um, and that's how most people find UU, I think, on this intentional journey of searching.
Yeah,
You are one of the few, the proud, who were
yeah,
raised as a UU, but most of us come by way of a lot of other different things because we are trying to intentionally search.
yeah. Well, and I was raised in both actually,
Oh, that's
because
right.
I
You
was,
said
yeah,
that.
so UU and
Oh,
Catholic.
that's right.
So yes, so I was raised. So like was raised
That
in the
search
dividing
started at
line,
home, right? Yeah. Ooh,
which is a whole other podcast.
that's right.
But
Literally, yeah.
yes, yeah. So I know that you are influenced a lot by Thoreau and
Mm.
Walden and all that good stuff, and I would love to hear a little bit about what that journey is, like when you've like read Walden, like sort of what you already mentioned sort of the finding God in nature aspect
Mm.
that you were raised with, but I'm curious about your journey with Thoreau.
Yeah. Yeah. I was introduced to the Transcendentalists in high school English, and not before, really, because at that point, I mean, since I wasn't a UU, I hadn't gotten the UU history lesson on how the Transcendentalists fit into all of that. So that was really just coming from more of a literary introduction. And I just, through reading about their philosophy, though, on life and on God or spirit, it was just like so interesting to me that at that time in history, like they thought of that in a very different way than I would have thought people would have conceptualized stuff back then. So I just, in terms of, like you said, God and nature, the nature as this divine creation, but not necessarily of this specific God figure. And I thought it was beautiful about, specifically Thoreau's journey and his decision to, again, intentionally go into Walden Pond, like search for this place and, build this house with his two hands and live there for, I think it was 2 years and 2 months, and to be able to really discover how much do we really need, um, how do I really want to spend my time so that I am living life to its fullest? And maybe it's not in the ways that I thought a full life would look. And I think that there is the lesson in that for us. I mean, I think it was just a weird lesson that I learned in COVID, actually, that we can exist with less, and we can reprioritize when we are able to slow our life down. Of course, like horrible circumstances led, that I would never ask for that to happen. It's that weird, you know silver lining of COVID, which for some people it was all traumatic, and my heart goes out to those people. I was fortunate enough to be able to have the experience of slowing myself down, quieting my spirit, but also really struggling with loneliness and struggling with sort of that feeling of the, that dark night of the soul that writers have written about. And so I did a lot of songwriting in COVID, and a lot of it really was inspired by this idea of finding refuge and a retreat from this chaotic, troubling world. And so this idea for the name of such a place is just Walden came to me. And so that is actually the name of the song that I created and decided would be the first single off of this EP that I'm working on and releasing in the winter or spring. And all of those songs I wrote during COVID. So it's just, and then there are different kinds of songs for me. It's a little bit more self-analytic, I guess, or a little bit more self-reflective. At the same time, in doing that self-reflection, it's the awareness that we are all connected, right? And so even though we're feeling alone in the moment, we are truly not alone, and especially we are not alone when we look at our world and look how we are a part of this delicate web. So yeah, so that's, I guess, some of the thoughts that have kind of brought me to connecting, transcendental influence or influence from Thoreau into my music. And yeah.
Nice. Yeah, and I definitely want to talk a bit more about that EP. And it's, oh man, I have so many thoughts, because I definitely resonate with the idea, or my COVID experience was also like a time to look inward and just sort of, yeah, slow down, analyze things, realize that I'm more I like people, but I am an introvert. That was a
Yeah.
fun thing.
I know, right? I always tell my husband, and because I've learned it over the years, I'm like, I've learned that I'm an extroverted introvert. And he still fights me on it. He's like, no, you're not. You are an extrovert through and through. I'm like, I don't think so, because I need that time. And that is sort of my spiritual practice, I guess, is most consistently songwriting. And that's a just me experience that I don't want anyone around. Even in the same house, I would rather not, right? So it was also the feeling of like, I couldn't get to this place of refuge because my whole family was with me all the time in COVID. So it was this yearning for this place. But yeah, it's so funny that to like get to know our own personalities a little different when we're taken out of our everyday routine. And we really ask ourselves, like, how much am I just sort of like, adjusting or assimilating to what's sort of the norm culturally, and how much do I really, again, being intentional, like really want to be doing these things. It was interesting for me. It sounds like for you too.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Oh man. So what you said about trying to write and also like figure out logistics with the family being around, does this is a question I'm coming up with now, but I'm curious, has your songwriting journey like shifted and changed as you've had kids?
Yeah, I mean, in such ways, really, as just, yeah, logistically, I think I do. I think it's cyclical because now that my kids are in school or school-age kids, then during the school year, that's when I have some more time, right, just to myself. So I do work part-time as a therapist, and I tried to craft that schedule, and I'm able to do that with, as well as my husband doing the work that he does. And so it's such a way that I can create some time during the week where I am alone. And then it's squeezing in like recording time. So I'm going in the evenings, or I'm going on a weekend morning, and then I come home and I switch back into mom mode, or I'm like trying to do, I'm doing this as we record this. Like I was joking with Gail before, because my daughter had my phone because it was afternoon tech time for half hour, right? So it's like just finding times where like mommy can do her own thing and have her own space. But I actually think that it makes me a better mom when they see me doing those things that bring me joy. They see me doing the things that are a practice for myself, that are restorative for me. That's the kind of person I want them to feel like they have every right to be, is someone who does take that time for themselves. And, as at the same time, like, it's just hard to get in that mode of songwriting when you're constantly feeling like, it's a busy day or whatever. So yeah, I think there have been definitely big gaps in my songwriting over the years, just because having young kids, it just doesn't lend itself. But what I did do, because I still felt like I have to have music in my life at some level, I did some community theater stuff when they were really little. And just being a part of that's another spiritual practice. It's like the coolest thing. Live theater is just the coolest thing, because you audition and you get in to this production with these people that you might have never met, or you've seen in other productions, but you form this unique, one time only structure, and this bond and these relationships. And you are all interconnected because you're putting on this production all together with, the timing and the entrances and the songs and everything. And so that was able to bring me a lot of joy and a lot of just restoration for my spirit. And I can definitely tell the times in my life when I don't have music. And again, it's not for me, it's not just listening to music, right? It's like either being in a show or songwriting or singing. It's like actively doing music. And I can definitely feel that my spirit is affected by it if I'm not doing it.
Yeah, what you said about the community theater thing, especially, like that is that is absolutely my experience with theater too. Is that it is this spiritual experience, and I appreciate you unpacking the logistics of like being a songwriter while also being a parent, because that is something I am curious about, like as someone who doesn't have kids, but that.
Well, and it's so funny because I'll be so excited, for example, to like, oh my gosh, you guys, I finished this song and would you guys want to listen to it? No, not really right now, Mom. They don't care. A lot of the times they don't care. Sometimes they care. Not all the time.
This is a brief tangent, but do you know Susan Egan's stuff at all?
I've heard her name. What is
Susan Egan is a Broadway performer.
Oh, she was, yeah.
Original Belle, does a lot of voiceover stuff.
That's how I know.
Megan Hercules.
Okay. I'm tracking now.
She's been one of my heroes since I was 13. But she has a song called Nina Doesn't Care, which she wrote about her daughter and how Nina, it's basically she doesn't care that I'm Belle. Like,
oh my God, that's so funny.
She likes Ariel better.
Yeah, so many people have that experience that are like performers and have little kids. I even remember, it's always stuck with me, that Celine Dion, because clearly I'm going to compare myself to Celine Dion. I think everyone should. But she said like her children would just like cry like when she sang. Like even the most like arguably beautiful singer in the world, like her kids not only didn't care, it like pained them to hear her, which I suppose Celine is not for everyone, so maybe that's truth. But yeah, it's just so funny that kids are just honest, and that actually puts your ego in check in like a really sweet way, because it reminds you again that like this is not like, can we not take ourselves this seriously? It's not the most important thing right now. And it has a beautiful way of just putting everything in perspective, and at the same time being able to say, yeah, this is not the end all be all, but it is important, and let me still create that space.
Well, and yes, and also it makes me think of in the prayer at my church. One of the things is for those whose primary spiritual practice is taking care of children, and like for and it's for teachers and stuff and parents and things like that. But I'm like, teaching is
such a good point.
Teaching is a spiritual practice. Like interacting with kids is a spiritual practice.
Absolutely. There is a really good, I don't know. I feel like I'm looking at my book collection, my professional therapy book collection right now, about the John Kabat-Zinn, who's one of the founders of sort of like the modern mindfulness, Western mindfulness movement, who created mindfulness-based stress reduction. He and his partner wrote a book on parenting, like mindful parenting. So maybe I'll share that with you, so you can post in comments or something like that.
For sure.
They're absolutely, you can mindfully do anything, right? And I think that mindfulness so beautifully complements so much of what UU is about. And it definitely, that is the river that runs through my music, I think. So yeah, I think that just made me go on that little tangent.
Yeah. I love the idea of the river that runs through your music for sure. That's a beautiful image. And that's a great segue back into things. So, so tell me a little bit about the song Walden and sort of all of the pieces of the puzzle that went into it and what that process was like.
Yeah, so Walden, just, I feel like it came pretty quickly. In terms of a song, like I kind of had that melody in my mind, and I had that image, like I told you about, in my mind, of that, just that yearning, that longing for that place. And so that is, as much as it turned out, like we just finished it, which is exciting. So we'll be releasing it in September. So, but you'll be able to hear it whenever this goes out, I think around that time, which is exciting. So Walden is sort of sounds like a lullaby a bit, but I think it has that edge, or at least I hope it does, of that yearning, because it's like, it's this place that I find comfort in, but I can't always feel like I can access it. And I find comfort there, but it's also sometimes a painful place to be, because I know I can't stay there. And I know that, it's not all about like going someplace and forgetting everything. And so it's, how do we wrestle with the balance between like wanting refuge and retreat, and then also facing ourselves and going back into the real world. I think, I don't remember which wise person said it, if it was Dalai Lama or somebody, that's like, if you think you're mindful, go and like go back to your family of origins house and like live with your parents for a month. Or like go live with all your relatives, like then, because really, I mean, that is the challenge, I think, for all of us in this modern age, is how can we live mindfully in this crazy world of so much divisiveness and so much, pain and suffering of all these different opinions and beliefs, and it sometimes is easier to be mindful in our own little place, right? And so at the same time, how can we be gentle with ourselves and give ourselves the gift, the restorative gift of having a space like that lets us breathe into the space that we need to be able to go back into the world and be mindful there too. So yeah, some of the lyrics are, I need to find something for myself, a vision of peace for me that no one else can touch or reach unless I tell them where to go, because they don't know.
It's
So
really
it's
hard
this
to get
sort
to
of this.
Walden.
It's really hard. It's that you have to have a passcode. It's a lot. It's really
like the trains are very confusing.
That's right.
That's my experience with the literal Walden. I don't
literal Walden. Yeah. I'll have to figure out in my own world. I just picture like secret doors and passcodes and stuff. But yes, to get to the actual Walden, trains are involved.
Yes.
And in terms of the writing of it, I call myself like I used to just call myself a songwriter, and then I realized that I was what they call a top line songwriter, which really just means I have the melody and chordal accompaniment a little bit, but like I don't know all the arranging stuff, right? So that's where my musicianship lends itself to collaboration and I'm so lucky, and it's full circle for me, that my partner in this right now, I met back at the UCC church when I was a teenager. He was the song leader at that service, and he was the one who heard my songs and was like, this is the forum for you, like please play your songs. He would help arrange them. He would add this extra guitar part stuff because he's just such a better guitarist than I am. And now he's retired, and so when we reconnected in Columbus a couple of years ago, he has his own recording studio at his house that he keeps building up, and we've had so much fun being able to take my song ideas and just expand them and try a little of this and what he adds. And I've been able to speak up for myself as in terms of like what the vision that I have for it, right? But then sometimes I don't know where it's going to go. So at the very same time, I want to have an opinion about how it should be, but I also want to be open to what it can be, you know, and hear how it strikes him and what his thoughts are. So yeah, the evolution of like a song is just so interesting. And so I'm really proud of it. And yeah, that's sort of the story of how Walden was made. Like I said, many nights and weekends when my lovely husband put the kids to bed or, you know, got them breakfast in the morning so I could sneak off and do those sessions. And and then we'll do the rest of the EP there too, for sure.
That's wonderful. I love hearing that the full circle journey with that producer too.
Yeah, because
And
there's that it's that level of spiritual trust, right? Because, you know, even though I think that he would say perhaps that he identifies as a Christian, like there's just such a overarching mindfulness to our like the union that was created when we first met in terms of how musically and spiritually things entwined. And so he was just this like natural pick for someone that I knew I could trust my music with, right?
Yeah.
Because it's not like music that I'm going to sing in bars to people, and it's not like rollicking fun music. It's something that's like vulnerable. It's really hard to play your own music for people, you know, and so he's someone that I can trust that stuff with. So that's important to find when, you know, I think that just some advice for other musicians, like just afraid of maybe collaborating, is just being able to get to know somebody just on that mindful level about, you don't have to have the same beliefs, but I think being able to together value music as a mission, as a spiritual practice for us, it's been a really beautiful thing.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I'm also thinking about the other thought I'm thinking about is the imagery of the song and of having your like personal Walden makes me think of a Teresa of Avila quote, which I feel like I've dropped this on other episodes. I'm gonna be that person that always drops the same quotes, but that's okay.
They must be good then. I think
yes.
that's impactful, and they must be applicable. I love it.
Yes,
I'm waiting
yes,
for
yes,
it.
yes.
Drop
So
it.
yes. So Teresa of Avila, and I'm gonna paraphrase, but it's this idea that the soul is this mansion with many rooms, and God is in one of those rooms. And it's finding like within the mansion where that peaceful place is. And I just always love that imagery and this idea that it's like it's always there, you just have to like tune into it. It's like a frequency, or it's just, I guess, in this metaphor, going around opening up doors and trying to figure out where it is.
I like that. It is this frequency. Sometimes there was a program at the UU church in Milwaukee called Wellspring. And that was a beautiful image too, because the idea is that there is this like wellspring running under the surface, and like, how do we tap down into it? Because it's always there, but we're not always listening into that frequency, right? And to me, again, that frequency is mindfulness. Of, are we really intentionally like tuning in to our inner and outer experience? And I think that goes into, you know, my work as a therapist, because I'm a relational therapist. So my job is really to help people tune into the space between each other, what's going on between each other, but also what is going on inside of them, and how their own mindfulness then of their own internal experience can be something that they bring to a relationship. And then that relational mindfulness is so healing, can create such a beautiful bond, can bring people closer together. So yeah.
Beautiful stuff.
Beautiful stuff.
So many beautiful stuff.
Walden, I need to find something for myself, a vision of peace for me that no one else can touch or reach unless I tell them where to go. 'cause they don't know. I'll be sitting by water lilies at the pond, listening to the birds sing till my blues are gone, and all the songs that linger on are yellow just for me. They're just for me. Leaves of trees form the canopy of the bed I sleep in every night, and the sunrise sky lighting up my eye every morning tells the story of Walden.
Yeah, so tell us a little bit about your first album, Shine.
Shine was a really amazing experience because it was my decision to kind of really return to producing music. And I mean, not producing in the like, I'm the producer of the music in a technical sense, but doing music for other people and putting my stuff out there. And I hadn't done that since college. I did a album of original songs for my senior thesis in high school. I did another album in college, again, just more for me, just because they were in me and I needed to get them out, and I just, wanted to have them down. And so I had been writing then all that time, but never recorded any of them between college and then Shine. So songs spanned, whereas Walden and those songs on the EP were all like written during COVID. The songs on my album Shine were written over the course of years, and I have one song in there for each of my girls, my children, one for Vera and one for Audrey. So if you look at the album, you'll see them. And then I have a song for my husband and I. And it's so a lot of it is about relationships, but it's just as much of it is about interconnectedness and other UU principles and themes. So the song itself, Shine, is about finding that the first line is everyday ecstasies, they won't elude me now that I have opened my eyes. And so just the idea of awakening to the beautiful miracles of every day, and also the power of those everyday moves of kindness that we can do that create magic in our world and that really make people's lives so much richer and that have that ripple effect, again, because we are all interconnected. So it's just a bright album. It's like literally I had an artist do this beautiful mandala image of the sun, and a line from Shine that says, when we are kind, we make the world shine. And so that really was sort of this conceptual, theme of the album is just that. And it was a studio album, so that was really cool. So I got to collaborate with some really talented musicians and a great sound engineer, and it was a bigger sound. It was really, really neat. So then to be able to go from that Shine experience to this EP, I felt that we had all been through something collectively in COVID, right? And our political climate, all of that. It's just like that Shine message is still so, I feel, important. And yet there are the sort of shadow parts of all of that experience that I wanted to be able to tune into, and themes of like mental health and struggle. So I think that I'm hoping that for listeners, Shine can be inspirational. There's a song on there called Minister to Me, which I actually wrote for the 10th anniversary of my minister's time with the church, the UU church in Milwaukee. So the theme of that is that we can all minister to each other in various ways, right? And I think that word gets sort of this, it's like a loaded term, minister, right? But what does that really mean? And so I wanted to kind of flip that a little bit and talk about how we do that for each other in different ways. And yeah, I think that, again, hopefully that that shift from big, shiny, sunny inspiration to acknowledgement of this like wholehearted, full human experience can be helpful for people because it has been a part of my journey. I've struggled with perfectionism and that idea that we have to put the shiny parts of ourselves on all the time for people. And I think that that was also another opportunity in COVID for us to be able to really get real with each other and acknowledge that we are struggling. And I think that that's been actually a really healthy change in our world, in our dynamic, in our the zeitgeist or whatever you want to say, of just like just lessening that stigma of mental illness. And it's not even really mental illness, it's just human experience, right? Like
I mean, yes, it's the human experience, and it's like we're going through a collective thing right now.
It's trauma, it's hardship, it's all of those things. It's, as Jack Kornfield calls it, who's one of my favorite mindfulness teachers to listen to, 10,000 joys and 10,000 sorrows, right? And so it is all of that.
I love this idea of the story of this transformation from the shiny, bright, loving album that is Shine, which it's wonderful. Also, I'm gonna say Ghost Town slaps. I love it.
Thanks. Yeah, that was my ballad, and you guys, if you have to listen to it if you want to give it a listen, because it's a little bit different. It jams a little. It's a little dark, a little edgy.
No, I was into it. I mean, the songs are good, but I was listening to it earlier today, and I was like, oh, okay. Like,
but even that one, right? That one for me was about like how we get to be the author of our own narrative, right? So like I can either, because I wrote it about a breakup, but it can be about any experience, right? Where we just have this like ghost town feeling about it. It's just like we've lost something, and it's the way that it is. And also we can shift our thinking about it into an experience of like, I decide what it means to me. And it doesn't have to mean any specific thing. It doesn't have to be all bad or all good. It can be an entirely, combination of all that. But I think that was Ghost Town for me. But you're right, that was one that maybe didn't seem as shiny happy, but
it was real good.
But even that, I was like, but then at the end you can pick your own narrative. Like, it's still like
yes, exactly. That's how the song goes now.
that is not the melody. Please still listen to it.
Indeed.
Did I pull through? Well, I'm standing here now under skies so blue. Now I know it's a ghost town, only if I make it so.
But what else I wanted to say is, the thing with my own experiences with like grief and transformation and the work that I do is figuring out that, like, continuing to emphasize that the joy that I carry through the world and that a lot of people carry through the world comes from going to that dark place. Like there's joy that comes from there, and sometimes we're singing about the light that is getting in, and other times we're singing about the crack in let the light in, if we want to just butcher that Leonard Cohen metaphor. But
I love that
like
one. Yeah, that's so true. And I think that a couple people just in our it just made me think of the writers and speakers that do this really well in our pop culture right now are Brene Brown and Glennon Melton Doyle. With her new book Untamed that came out like during COVID and was just like such a gift. And then Brene's work and her languaging of wholehearted living, and what does it mean, to live in a way that like honors our entire experience.
America's therapist, Brene Brown.
Oh gosh,
I love her.
Me too. So good.
Yes. Oh yeah, no, there are so many people who are having those having those difficult conversations, and it has been so interesting just over the past like 10 years or so, seeing how therapy is less stigmatized and we're being
Mhm.
more open about things. And like, especially during these COVID times, like the sheer amount of ADHD memes that I've gone down where I'm just like, oh my gosh, like, which is
Right.
a whole thing where it's just like, there's definitely a lot of, I mean, within the internet talking a lot about mental health and stuff, there can be rabbit holes where you go down where you start to like self-diagnose yourself because you're bored in COVID.
Oh, for sure.
That's
Yeah.
problematic, but
But then you're right. The flip side of that is that it is more of this global experience that people are
Yeah.
like, well, it's not because there's something pathologically wrong with me. Again, it's because I went through this really hard thing. And of course, I'm having reactions to this whole experience. And the kind of therapy that I do is very much based in attachment theory. And so that whole idea of it's really about like the beautiful thing about that and what I truly like one of my biggest values is like we heal in relationships and that it is relationships that will save us. We are not meant to go through this world alone, and even the relationship that we have with ourselves, of course that's in immensely important, but if we can feel safe enough to turn to another trusted other and share our inner world and our inner experience with them, it is that magic and healing happen, and I see it in therapy. And so that is also a bit of what songwriting and sharing my songs is that I'm not just journaling or doing that as a solitary thing. I'm turning outwards and I'm putting that out there, and what someone else might, how someone else might take in that song or share with me about what that song is, like that's where sometimes transformations happen. And so I think just, the invitation to I mean, as cheesy as it sounds, like let your light shine, and that like here's a Christian reference, don't hide it under a bushel, right? Like, I mean, is that a Christian reference?
Yeah.
What is that from?
The Bible.
Cool. Hashtag the Bible.
Hashtag the Bible.
So, for all those still Unitarians considering Christ, that one was for you.
Yep. Unitarians listening will find this funny. Our Christian friends might also find this funny because they're our friends.
They are our friends. 95% people, 95%. So I think it's just the gift of being able to also know, like everybody learning how critical that is in COVID to reach out to other people, because that is where the healing can come. Like people were finding, I'm suffering so much more because I don't have that contact with other people, right? And that's what broke my heart about the people that then couldn't even make contact with anybody because, of their circumstances. Like hopefully everybody now is like a Zoom expert and can like have made contact with their loved ones through that. But yeah, we maybe had conversations with other people that we wouldn't have had otherwise. And I think we just saw the humanity in each other in a different way, whether it was, our coworker walking past with underwear on at the other side of the Zoom meeting, or like just like you saw weird things happening all year. But it's like people's humanity came through, right? It's that like the networker guy that like had the baby that was like wheeled in, and then like the wife had to come and get the baby out. It's just like at the end of the day, we are all humans trying our best to act like grown-ups and just do our best. And so I think that there's just really something beautiful to be able to honor about like just like no one has it all figured out. And if we can all just start saying that, then that can just let us all like take a collective deep breath and have compassion, right? Know that we are really, in most instances, trying our best.
Absolutely. And that has been something that I've noticed as well, of this like being able to first of all, starting to teach out in the world again has also just like the minute, like the month that I started, like I was fully vaccinated and could actually be in person with my students was amazing, especially with the students who we started virtual and then we got to meet in person. Like that was just,
It's like,
it
you
was,
do exist in 3
oh
dimensions.
my, yeah, exactly. And it was just really meaningful. And it is, and like the shift of actually like having in-person conversations and
And I
like,
hope we never
yeah,
lose the like wonder and joy of that.
yeah.
Right? Like think of just it's like those are the again, those are those gifts of COVID that like I wish we could have had in another way so that there
Mm-hmm.
didn't have to be so much suffering, but we didn't. So can we take gifts from it? And that gift of like not taking for granted those
Mm-hmm.
relationships and the power of just physical touch and
Mm-hmm.
eye contact and really, like you said, the in-person connectiveness, which is even more important now than ever before because of all this social media stuff and all the research has been shown about how that can really mess with our system, right?
Before I go down a book recommendation rabbit hole, I am going to segue this to uh, the Camp Walden.
Oh, thank you so much for
Yes.
mentioning that.
Yes,
Yeah,
we should
so
talk about Camp Walden.
that would be lovely. So I created this private Facebook group, which isn't private if you join it, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's welcome to all, except for if you're a therapy client of mine or have been, because I want to keep those separate. But it is a space where every week I'll do a video about an aspect of mindfulness, and I will include a song. And so I think, was it last week? I think I sang Shine,
Mm-hmm.
and talked about, let's see, the themes I've done are intention, impermanence. We talk about authenticity. It's just 20 to 30 minutes. Again, if you're a UU, it's sort of a familiar format of maybe like a lay person homily or something, and like a little message and a song. But I really want to invite people to go like have a practice, and this is just one way to have a practice during the week where I light a candle, we do some deep breathing, I read a quote, we center ourselves on the theme, I share the message, there's a song, and then it ends with some growth work, this opportunity for like how can we sort of take this concept that we've talked about out into our world. And so I try to make it fun with like, if you post a picture of like the invitation to do whatever growth work I said, like this past week it was forest bathing. So just take a picture of, the forest canopy that you see, or yourself, a selfie in the forest, or, it doesn't have to be a forest, wherever you are, and post that. And I do fun little giveaways, and it's just hopefully a place where people can find a bit of that community. But then also it's a place of substance, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where it's something that it's connecting online, but in a way that we can get to know people that, might be just like ourselves, searchers on this journey. And what else do I want to mention? Oh, and I named it Camp Walden with Katy, just as like this fun little, homage to the song, and also just like, what we've been talking about with the influence of Thoreau and Walden on me. So, and I don't
Mm.
put it past myself in the future to maybe even think about like an actual retreat or something. I think that would be
Yeah.
so cool, because I think that adults deserve to go to camp too. And then I got a little
Yes.
jealous of my kids when they were going to camp. And yeah, what kind of camp would we want to go to? Well, I want to go to a camp where I can hear music and I can meditate and I can do yoga and I can share like ideas and journal and walk in nature and be with friends. And so this is just my mini version of that online.
Yeah, and it does really feel like logging into like a you're sitting by the lake for like 20 minutes and there's a chalice
Hmm.
lighting and it's just very sweet. I love it.
Thank you
It's
so
cool.
much. Yeah, you've been so
Yeah.
supportive of that. Thanks, Gail.
Yeah. No, it's been great. Yeah. Well, yeah, and I love that that you're building that space of community online, because going back to that social media conversation, like I find that because that it helps to social media can be like a highway combined with Times Square combined with jiggling your keys in front of your psyche, and
Exactly.
it's just, and
So much, so
as people
much.
who are creating things, like we're giving people opportunities to just get off the highway for a second
Mm.
and
Yeah.
do some deep focus. And I think it that in that way social media can be a tool to be like, okay, let's get off, let's unplug,
That's
let's go over
right.
here, you
That's
know.
right. Yeah, that's such a
um
good point. And I think, I mean, same goes with emails, right? Like, I would love if you are listening and you want to join my email list too, but I try to make those of substance, right? I
yeah.
try to keep those, the kind of feeling of community where, yeah, you can hear what I'm up to in the world of music, but then I can also share with you some things about mindfulness and maybe even some therapy type of things. And another thing that I do is some artistic stuff. I make these called the mindful collages, so you'll see me talking about those. And you can find all this on if you just go to katyoberle.com, you'll see links to lyric videos. That'll take you to YouTube, and you'll find you can listen to my album Shine there. You can listen to the videos for Camp Walden are actually going to be posted there. You can find them in the Facebook group too if you join. And Katy Oberle Music and Mindfulness is my page on Facebook that you can find me at. And then I'm on Instagram. So I'm around, and I would love
Yeah.
to, get to know you, have a conversation, and have you be a part of, this little piece of kind of the spiritual experience, the mindfulness experience. I like to talk about it, uh, Camp Walden. So really, I think of that as sort of an offshoot of how I do what I do is a creative place for refuge, mindfulness, and growth. So that
Mm.
creative element, because creativity is such a way to the divine. It's just, if you've ever gone to any live theater, ballet, live music, it's just like takes you to another level. And
Mm.
so when creativity can be combined with mindfulness, that to me is just the greatest. So I try to, do that in my own little way, and would love for you to check it out. And thank you
Yay.
so much, Gail, for
Of
having me. It's been
course.
such a fun conversation.
Yeah. And before I let you go, I want to ask you the question that I try to ask people at the end of every episode, which is
Beautiful.
where does inspiration live in your body?
Hmm. When I feel inspired, I feel it in my heart first, and then I go right to my head if I'm the one that the inspiration has like provoked to create, because then in my head those come the lyrics,
Mm-hmm.
and so like I just I and then my hands, right, are the connector between me and the music. Sometimes it's in then grabbing my guitar, so I feel like head, heart, and hands are this little triad of kind of where that lives, which is sort of the core of me, I guess. But yeah, that's a beautiful question. I love it.
Yeah, no, I love that. I love this idea of like there's like a delegation that happens.
Who's going first? Right.
Yeah. I love that you have that system down. That's wonderful.
I don't know if I have it down, but I
I'm well,
definitely
no one has it
acknowledge that,
down.
like, yeah, but I acknowledge that, like, yeah, something hit my heart, and boop, an idea then
Hmm.
sprung from that, and the doing of that idea, right, is where my hands get involved, whether I'm writing that down or, yeah, playing a guitar or yeah.
That's beautiful. Oh man. Well, this has been a wonderful conversation. I think there's just a lot of really solid takeaways that
Hmm.
listeners can grab onto. So many good quotes. And I will link all of the places where you can be found in the show notes. And yeah, thank you so much for
Wonderful.
being on the show.
Thanks, Gail.
Hey, friends, before we get into our outro, I wanted to call your attention to a couple links in the show notes. Since Katie and I had this conversation, she has launched her crowdfunding campaign for her upcoming EP, Driftwood. So that link is in the show notes. Also, Walden is now out in the world, so you can listen to that track wherever you stream your music. All right, now we go into the outro. Thank you for listening to Faith and What Resonates. The theme music for this show is an original composition called My Journey, My Song, the first song I wrote when I was 19. Faith and What Resonates is part of the New Faith New Media Network. You can discuss this and future episodes in the New Faith New Media Facebook group at facebook.com/groups/NFNM group. You can also follow us on social media, and those links are in the show notes. We have several other shows, including A Pastor and a Priest Walk into a Movie Theater, and you can access all of these shows by subscribing to New Faith New Media wherever you get your podcast. You can also support the New Faith New Media Network on Patreon. All Patreon supporters get access to our Patreon exclusive podcast, Blessed Lunatics, where the founding members of the New Faith New Media explore the divine through laughter, which means we usually drink and share stories and make jokes about our different faith backgrounds. Actually, there's an episode where I share the backstory of this song you're hearing right now. Finally, if you want to know more about my music, you can head to my website, gailgallaghermusic.com. Thanks for listening, and remember to stay curious and keep following the magic of the things that resonate.
New Faith, New Media.
Theology.
Nerdery.
Community.